Hi, everybody. Welcome to Living the Liminal this week. It's Christy here. I'm so glad you're here. This has been quite a season. It's been interesting. I have loved meeting my two guests. So if you have not listened to those episodes, go back and find those two episodes in the links. And so I want to finish some of the storytelling that I was talking about a couple episodes ago when I was talking about my daughter and how she was having this revelation about her upcoming swim meet. And so I want to kind of share a couple more things because they're so transformational. And since this podcast and the work that I do, and I'm so passionate about transforming us back to the soul beings we were here to be and to live. So I want to kind of share. So after we have this conversation in the kitchen, and if you don't know about this conversation and you're curious, go back a couple episodes and listen to it. But my daughter and I she came to me the day of her swim meet, and she was like, "Hey, Mom, do you think I can get out of school? I have, one of her classes was going on a field trip and there was no one going to be there." She's like, "Do you think I can come home and just rest? I'm just a little anxious." And I was like, "Absolutely." It's not something that we normally promote in our family, but we definitely understand there are moments when you have to kind of shift and adjust to meet the needs, right? And this was a big moment for her. And she had been doing so much prep work. So she was like, "Do you want to go get coffee?" And so we go and get coffee. And I am just part of my parenting style with my children is just to be present. Like, I never know what we're going to talk about. I don't know what we're going to say. Sometimes they end well. Sometimes with the beautiful daughters, the mother-daughter thing can get a little messy. And we just roll with it. We always roll with whatever. We just accept the flow of it in and out, and we roll with it and we adjust as we need to. So I agree to go get coffee, and I'm just being very present, and she starts to bring it up. Because if you know about teenagers, you don't bring up the topics. You wait until they sort of like give you that opening, and then you go in, right? And you meet them. So we're having this conversation, and she's talking to me and about, being a little nervous for the meet, and I'm trying to say stuff from my heart, which was I wanted her to know that we really don't care about the outcome. I mean, we care, but we don't care. Like, it doesn't change who she is. Who she is just this beautiful soul, and she's got so many gifts and talents. And this is one moment in her lifetime journey. And so what we wanted her to do was not attach so much to the outcome. And yet I wanted her to know that we're there, we're supportive, we're whatever she wants, we're here to help her get there because it's what she wants. And this is where we're going to go down this path with her. And the interesting thing she says to me is, "Well, I'm doing it different this time." And it caught me. And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she says, "Well, I'm not quitting." And again, it kind of shook me a little. And again, I went in, got more curious. "Tell me what you mean by that." And she said, "Well, in the past, I've given up, and I've done this work in my mind where I realized, oh, I can't even make that time. So I don't even go to the meet and give it my all." Okay. I was done. It didn't matter what happened in that team conference meet because my daughter evolved in that moment of realizing. It still gets me a little choked up. In that moment of realizing that you were at a crossroads. Once again, the crossroads are there every bit of our life. Carolyn Mace talks about this in all of her work. We're always at a crossroad. You're always at this moment of inner battle, inner tension. And can you hold the tension enough to choose a new way? That's how you evolve and grow. Or sometimes we don't choose a new way and we go down the old path. But again, you're going to be met again with another moment, an experience where you get to choose again. because life is always about choosing again and again and again, and you get that opportunity. So right there, I was sitting there and I looked at her and I was like, oh my God, I am so proud of you. More than anything else here, I am so proud of you. Because in those moments, you guys, when we just are so present with our reflection and we can see the past so clearly and with clarity to know what I did back then, I don't regret. I'm not going to go down there, but I see what I did. And this time I'm just going to try it a new way. And the fact that she was sitting there and she's like, I haven't given up. Like, I'm going all in. And I was just so excited about this moment with her. So that night we go to it was like a prelim and then a final the next day. And we go to the prelim and oh my God, I mean, she just, and I told you this before, we had this work around the imagination. Like, what if you had just imagined you were a fish in water? What if you just did you imagined that you were a fish in water and got into that feeling of what it would be like to just get in there. And so I watched her. It was like someone else was in that water and it was beautiful. And so later I said, did you use that? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, okay, why don't you use it again tomorrow? Because you got to go to the finals. So she knew she needed to cut a significant amount of time in her event. And she's a butterflyer. And she has just had big dreams around being a butterfly swimmer. And she has a body built as a butterflyer. And she can do anything she wants to do. Everyone believes in her. She doesn't necessarily always believe in herself. And again, this is her journey. Like, as a parent and as probably her coach and all the people that surround her, you cannot want more for other people than they want for themselves. And you cannot activate a different behavior in someone else than they are willing and ready and able to perform in themselves. And this is a hard thing about the human dynamic, because it's like we want and we desire, and even as the mom, like I can envision all these things happening. And yet for me to put that kind of projection and pressure onto her would just be to be taking away the journey from her. And this is really what love is allowing people the freedom to expend their energy and to walk their journey in whatever way, conscious or unconscious, they choose to do. It is not a reflection on you. It does not define you. You have to then define your own journey and what walking on your journey looks like. And this is the hardest part about some of our decisions when it comes to people we love and care about. So I'm watching her that night of finals, and she gets into doing her event. And there were 8 swimmers, and she starts out, and I can instantly tell, holy shit, she's really not going to perform in the way she wants. She's swimming and she's in 4th place. And something in me was just like, release it, let it go. And I just whispered, be the fish. Just be the fish, girl. Just be the fish. And I watched this young person in 4th place going, down the lane, back and down the lane again. And something shifted. I felt it in my body. Everyone felt it in the entire auditorium who was looking at her. She pulled something out deep within her soul. She ends up in her event, in her moment of these 8 swimmers, pulling out, going from 4th to finishing 1st in her event and in her heat. And I'm telling you, the looks on her coaches, her friends who were supporting her, I even looked at my husband. We were like, oh my God, Oh my God. I know she felt it because I could tell she kind of like looked up at us and I knew what was happening. So here's the other interesting thing about transformation is there comes moments when you have to choose again something different. And she did, right? She chose, I'm going to stay in. I'm going to give it my all. I'm not giving up this time. And by doing that, something becomes alive in you that has been dormant, hidden, rejected, undeniably, a force, a life force of energy within you that allows you to have a different result. It may not be the result. It was not the result she wanted in her head because she did not get the time in order to advance to the state competition. And yet, what I said to her, because I made her come over to us as we were leaving, and I said, I want you to know, this is going to sound dorky because I'm your mom, but I want you to know from one human to another human, I saw what you did. And it was damn fucking impressive. Because what she did in that moment is sustainable for the rest of her life. She will never forget that moment when, one, she chose in a crossroads to not give in to the ego's deceptions and lies that you cannot do something. She chose to stay in and not give up. And she chose to be committed to the end, regardless of the results. And then she got in the performance, okay, in the experience, and she proved it to herself. She actually performed to that commitment level, that deep desire. That's what she pulled out. That will sustain her through all her journey, more so than if she had just gotten the time and gone on to state. The lessons learned are different. They just are. And I was just amazed because, again, in my line of work with transformation kind of occurs in kind of like a 3-part thing, okay? You first kind of get a little bit of a nudge. And I'm not saying that it has to be some big, lofty experience, although sometimes it is. But sometimes it can just be a little nudge that's, oh, something just feels off right here, or something is kind of gaining my attention. And it's like you're given these, it's an opportunity. The nudge is an opportunity. It's the beginning of transformation. It's the beginning to making a different choice, where we go from making unconscious, unknown choices to making more consciously known and unknown choices. So we just build an awareness around through this nudge. And again, the nudge, big or small, it doesn't matter. It's a nudge. It comes in to say, hey, it's time. Like, it's time. It's like a knock on the door or a telephone ringing. It's time. It's time for you to evolve. So here's this nudge. And then then from the nudge, you kind of get curious. And everything starts to expand and open up, because in order for you to see clearly, you have to get stuff out of the way. So you have to kind of enlarge the picture, right? Which is what they do when they do like MRIs, or when they take any kind of scans, or when you're really trying to see something that's small in a picture, you blow it up so that you can see all the intricate details. Well, that's what curiosity is. It's like you have to kind of step back, you have to lean back, you have to say, okay, I'm ready to take a look at what's going on here. And from there, you dig. That's a curiosity is a creative opportunity to dig. And what I mean by dig is you're going to look at decisions made in the past, made in the current moment, ones you want to make in the future. You're going to set it with intention. And intention, see, really, you can have the wrong intention because you're attaching it to an outcome, but the intention is always going to come from exactly where it needs to come from. So like people will talk about, well, are your intentions aligned? Well, okay, let's take the example of what if your intentions aren't aligned? Then your outcome's going to be different. And that again is feedback. So to dig, you're going to look into your decisions. You're going to look into your intentions, and it's going to equalize growth. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your decisions are. It doesn't matter what your intention is. It's always going to equalize growth. So when we dig so that we evolve, so that we grow. And from there, once you have this awareness, once you understand your intentions, you understand what works and doesn't work, you've taken a look at and you've kind of like reflected on your decisions, past and present. Okay, the only option available, there are no other options. The only option available is to be. Like you then grow, you then expand, you evolve. And what that means is there is no other action that will suffice enough. That will feel good than the new way. The old way just doesn't work anymore. When you become aware, the old stuff doesn't work anymore. You may not always know what the new way is, because I do believe that's part of the leveling up. But within transformation, once you get a nudge, and once you begin to dig into your own curiosity, you just have to act in a new way. It's nothing else is available anymore. But the interesting thing is, acting in a new way always backfires. I mean, this is another illusion of transformation. It always will backfire because our ego mind has a protective layer to it. It has a protective base. So its full on-board mission is to protect and safeguard. So of course the ego, as your best freaking friend, is going to come in and be like, I don't know about that. Are you sure? Are you sure you want to do that? And it's always going to backfire. And it's going to backfire because it's going to give you little snippets of moments that are sort of like, they're going to feel like a past moment, and you're going to develop some apathy. You're going to develop some numbing devices. You're going to feel the battle. And whenever that ego narrative is doing its job, it's not there to cause you to suffer necessarily or cause you more pain. It's really there to help you evolve. And you need that layer, okay, in there, because it's what creates the solid foundation. It's kind of like, like when you're laying a floor in like the kitchen and they put in tiles and then they put in the grout. Okay, there's always like this shiny layer that goes on because it solidifies everything. So you need the ego backfiring on you so that you are solidifying that transformation, so that there will not be a going backward, so that you are here to evolve. That is the soul's purpose, is to evolve into higher purpose all the time. It's never about sliding back into. It's always about, oh, wow, that just was tier 2. Again, get me to the next spot. Get me to a place where my foundation is so secure in this new way of acting and being. That's the transformation that a lot of people don't talk about, because to be quite honest, that's the hard freaking part of transformation, is the not going back. Not going back. There's power and there's energy in not going back. And it equals to the power and the energy in moving forward. And sometimes there's a confusion in the perceptual capabilities of the mind to see them as equal, but they are not equal when you step back and take a look at them. One has an energy source to it that feels open and free and peaceful, and the other has an energy source that is anchored to feeling a lower vibration. And it is only through our awareness of feeling the equalizing parts of both of those narratives, both of those experiences, that we can understand that one is just there to protect. It's going to always be that protective layer. It never goes away. We don't run from our ego. We lean into it. We kind of flirt with the fear of it. And then we still say, nope, I'm still going to move forward. I'm still going to move in this direction because it is what's best for my higher purpose. And once you can continue to get so connected to your soul, you start to understand, you listen differently because you've quieted the noise in your life to be able to feel that clash of power, because it is when the inner battles start to take place within us. That's the opportunity to transform fully and to really align your actions with your soul's desire for purpose and service to a much larger universe than you can really even understand or imagine in these little sufficey moments. So I just think there's so much availability to us when we understand fully this transformation, because these are not easy moments in evolving. And if anyone sorts of like paint this picture that, oh, transformation is so beautiful, that's not my line of work. My line of work is it beautiful? Yeah, there definitely is. There's freedom, there's peace, there's joy. There's a different feeling about when you're transforming and you're moving through and evolving. And it is more hilarious and fun to live this way than to be anchored into something that just feels low and heavy and dense. It is not with the faint of heart. The work is intense and it's constant, and it requires the truth of you. And we really are living in this time where consciousness is shifting into a more truthful state and a more matter of fact. So taking a look at matter and material worlds and say, is this really me? Or is it time to relinquish the anchor and to allow myself to be who I am really meant to be here in this moment? So the other story that I want to share is this really hilarious moment. I, as a mom, tend to do, sometimes crazy things depending on how you look at it. But so I have an older son, he's 24, and he does not live here in St. Louis anymore. And so he and I were talking one time, and I was like, honey, what you're talking about really sounds like this Viktor Frankl book, Man's Search for Meaning. That might be a really good book for you to read. He's getting into this part of his adult life where he likes to read and expand his mind and learn new things. So I suggested the book. He ended up putting it on his Christmas list. And so he got it for Christmas. And I was looking over it while we were all, in the living room around the tree that morning. And I said, oh, well, when you get done reading it, I love this book. We can talk about it. Because he and I are both adults, an adult parent to an adult is a different kind of relationship. And I am open to how this relationship is evolving now that he is an adult. And so I just made the comment. So about 3 weeks ago or so, he texted me and said, hey, Mom, I finished that book. So whenever you want to get together and talk, that's great. Okay, so I had to do some admittance, which was I had never read the book. I have been impressed with Frankl's work. I have studied it in articles and have listened to people talk about it. I use his quotes quite often. I just always felt a sense of the book, but it's quite like me to do that. Like I can hold a book and just kind of feel into it all. It's part of my intuition. And I don't really always read a lot of the books. So this moment of my son inviting me into a conversation about a book, I was like, well, holy heck yeah, I'm doing it. But I had never read the book. So I said, well, how about we do it next weekend? Because in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, that would give me like 7 days. I can definitely, I went in, how many pages, divide by 7 days. You know how you do the math. Okay. So here comes the week, and I just had a busy week with work stuff and family obligations, and I didn't read the book. And it was Friday night, and we were supposed to talk at 4:00 on Saturday. So my husband was laughing at me, and my kids are laughing, my other kids who live here at home still. And they were like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to get up in the morning and read the book. Okay, first of all, I'm a slow reader. I've never, ever in my life read a book in a day. And yet, my desire to be connected to my children in whatever way is being invited in or is desired, I'm there. Like, I'm there for people. Like, this is just who I am. So I wake up really early in the morning and I read the book all day. I kind of lock myself in my room with my coffee. I say, don't bother me to anyone. I'm going to read this book. And I did. I finished at 3:45 and we were talking at 4. And I owned up to it with him. He thought it was hilarious. And then I fell in love with this book. And so if you're not on my newsletter, you might want to get on the newsletter, because this is the month of February, and I'm spending the entire month of February talking about different aspects of this book that just kind of came alive in me. But the coolest thing is, the first part of the book, Frankel does deliver some perceptions of his experience in a very much different way than what we know about from the prisoners of war in that concentration camps, and what those experiences were truly like. And even different than like the images and the graphics that you see. But what caught my attention were 3 moments in the first part of this book. And I'm going to share them with you, because we always talk about in transformation the power of the mind to really elevate a different experience. That's really the simplest way to understand transformation. And that it cannot occur in only the mind. It has to occur within the body, specifically around emotion and that emotional sense of how you perceive what the narrative in the mind has created, okay, has manufactured. So when we take a look at these things, Frankel gives 3 pieces of what I believe are evidence to support the power of the human dynamic, which is mind, body, soul, to exponentially move past any experience, because theirs was quite intense. So I'm going to go into and say any experience and evolve into something else. Okay. And the reason why I'm saying this, you'll know when I'm talking about these 3 things. So the first thing he talks about, and I'm going to give you the page number just because if you're listening and you want to go to the book, but it's on page 27. He talks about that some of the prisoners lived vicariously through their dreams, and that at night they would dream about life way different, where there was enough food, where there were other experiences, where they were clothed in warmth and safety, where they felt full and whole, because the unconscious mind has the ability to hold space for your truth, and it will give you your truth. It is your conscious mind that sees outward and starts to kind of orchestrate or create or write a narrative to support what your experience is. But it is the unconscious mind who holds the truth of who you are. And it's going to give you a little. And I thought it was so interesting that the dream life of these prisoners, while it wasn't changing their outward experience necessarily, but it was holding them in a more freeing space within their inner life. And quite possibly that could have, again, if we go back and look at research, I don't know, we'll have to find those that have had that experience. But I thought the fact that he talked about it was so interesting, because we're fascinated by dreams, and yet we're scared to death of them, because we don't often understand the symbolic nature of them, the imagery. We don't understand the messaging and the mythological representation that's taking place, because not only is our unconscious tapped into our personal experiences, but it's tapped into a collective archetypal experience that draws from generations upon generations upon generations upon cultures and cultures and cultures. So it has an historical reference to it. And our unconscious can deliver on both aspects at the same time. So I thought that that was a powerful use of helping us to understand their experience in something that would derive a very intense and almost no way out kind of suffering. The second thing that Victor talks about in his book is that there were going on spiritual seances, that behind the scenes, there were men, prisoners, getting together late night to have these spiritual seances where they were inviting in the spirits, again, through transformation, where we transcend suffering and pain and hurt and worry and anxiousness to a power beyond our understanding, beyond what's even visibly in front of us. I thought it was so amazing to hear him talk about how when you connect to a spiritual aspect in this way, you release an authority, and you almost gain a supportive authority to help you manufacture a different experience, almost like changing out glassware and looking through different lens. And I thought that it was just such a derivative of creativity, that within our human dynamic, there's such an availability to a more creative way of looking at experiences. And again, I'm all about supporting the idea that mediumship can be creative and a lifestyle, more so than it is just something that some people can do, that it is truly available to all of us to connect to those who are unseen as a form of spiritual agency, almost like spiritual prosperity in some way, that it will definitely help with the richness of your life. And so I thought that that was another really interesting aspect. And the third thing that I'm going to share from Frankel's book is he talked about that. This was with his first wife. He was separated from his family and his wife, and he went on to a different camp. And he started to feel this, he started to feel the hook in getting into deep despair and depression over the external landscape that he was experiencing, the camps, the lack of clothing, the lack of healthcare, the lack of food, the lack of warmth, the lack of nurturing, and the humility that went on, and the lack of dignity for just him as a person. And what he started to do was connect with his wife. He couldn't see her. She wasn't there in front of him, but he felt her, and he would connect with her through what's called active imagination. Because the mind, while it can also be corrupt, it can also be abundant and beautiful and flourish in this prosperous way of just imagining an experience taking place. And so, see, the brain doesn't differentiate between positive and negative. So because the brain doesn't differentiate, an image is neutral. It is only our narrative of the mind that starts to collaborate what that image means and give you a narrative. And when you start to repeat the narrative over and over in your psyche, you begin to embody that narrative, and then you begin to see it out in the world. So when you can invert that experience and almost take the creative power of your mind and create, some might say, oh my gosh, that's such an illusion. Yeah, in a way it is, but that's the power of our third eye chakra. It's the power that our mind has to be able to say, oh my gosh, I can close my eyes and I can just envision and feel, kind of like what we did with my daughter when we told her to feel like a fish in the water. You can envision and you can embody and you can feel into what it would look like, what it would sound like, what it would. So what he did is he started to cultivate an experience for himself where he was chatting with his wife and he was talking about just everyday stuff. He even went so far as to close his eyes and imagine that he was on a stage talking to people about logotherapy, which was his big research project and paper and book that he was writing prior to being offset by the camps. So we have this availability of these unconscious habits. We don't always tap into them, whether it's dream work, whether it's imagination work, and whether it's the spiritual agency of authority that we offer up to. Transformation must include all three of these for it to be long-standing and sustainable for life, because your soul derives from this kind of work. This is really where your spiritual being can enlist its true nature, is by the unconscious work with dreams, the unconscious work with active imagination, and bringing those imageries into a more conscious state of mind. And the fact of connecting to the unseen and the unknown and the invisible allows for you a spiritual freedom that is different than lacking. And so often, I don't want you to think that I'm denying our suffering as a human being and that there is pain and suffering in experiences. There definitely is. But through these mental authorities of transformation, we can transcend that suffering. Doesn't mean we want to get rid of it. Doesn't mean we don't want to feel it. We're going to feel it, but we're going to also open up to what's available. This is how you open up to possibility, potential, and what's available. And in transformation, the ultimate growth is to get to that possibility, to get into that potential, to rise up into what's available. So, that's all I got today. I want you just to sit with it. There's so much here. I hope you just take something from this talk today. My heart feels good delivering it to you. And you have everything you need inside of you to do whatever you want to do. Just believe in yourself. Trust in what's available to you. And if you need anything, you know where to find us. Take care, my friend. Peace out.